When I think of 2010, a lot of fun stuff comes to my mind. Getting the inspiration to want to do YouTube at the ripe old age of 9 years old, learning of E3 for the first time, being really disappointed by Ben 10 Ultimate Alien, and also seemingly being the only person who felt that way. And of course, following my yearly ritual. You go on the Sega website in the hopes of seeing the new Sonic game, and 2010 was no different. In fact, that year had 3 games, what would ultimately be the last Riders game, Sonic Free Riders, a terrible 2D throwback in Sonic 4 Episode 1, and the main event, Sonic Colors, releasing on the Wii in November of 2010. Sonic Colors was promised to be the next epic adventure as Sonic and Tails venture into space to save an alien race called Wisps from Dr. Eggman. Gotta say, I was pretty pumped in the pre-release, like always. I mean, Sonic Colors looked to be bringing back the daytime Sonic gameplay from Sonic Unleashed, only this time we'd be doing it without the Werehog gimmick. So that really spoke well of how Sonic Colors was going to turn out. It really was good of them to do this for Colors, since that was one of the biggest criticisms given to Unleashed. The Werehog not being needed, so by taking that out of the sequel and focusing on what worked instead of just tossing everything out like they normally do, is a job well done by Sega standards. The only monkey wrench in the operation came later in the pre-release when I received harrowing news. The entire voice cast of the Sonic series was being replaced with the exception of Mike Pollock as Dr. Eggman. I first heard the new voice of Sonic, Roger Craig Smith, via the samples of audio from the Alton Towers Hotel promotion of Sonic. This didn't inspire confidence, but when a cutscene of Colors was released to the public, I felt a little better.
Oh, there you are. Where'd you run off to?
I did a little shopping, grabbed a bite to eat, and trashed a giant killer robot.
Oh, really? And they've got shopping here too?
But still, characters getting recast was something I never liked as a kid. You just kind of identify that character with the voice. By this point, I had come to accept that Ryan Drummond was just the old Sonic voice and Jaleel White as the oldest Sonic voice. But Jason was Sonic in my mind, and that goes for every member of the 4Kids cast, so seeing them all go just kind of sucked. However, that did not deter me from being really excited for Sonic Colors. The wait for this one felt much more agonizing than usual, as I spent so much time thinking about how cool this game was going to be, and on November 16th of 2010, the game finally released. This being one of the first games I ever got the day it came out. Well, this and Ben 10 Ultimate Alien Cosmic Destruction and the Sly Collection, both of which came out in the weeks preceding Colors. Difference being, I actually still have that very same day one copy of Sonic Colors that I got 11 years ago, and it still works now. In terms of reception, Sonic Colors has gone through quite the transformation in said 11 years, but I think I can save that for the end. When you start the game, you find out that it's pretty light on story. The concept is that Eggman's built this amazing space amusement park as Sonic and Tails show up to stop whatever evil plot is going on. Well, they try pulling this thing where Tails doesn't believe there's an evil plot until 3 zones in, but that's so pointless it doesn't even warrant a mention. That evil plot being that Eggman's capturing aliens called Wisps that have an energy inside them called Hyper-Go-Ons that Sonic can use to his advantage throughout stages. The Wisps befriend Sonic as he fights against Eggman's new plan. That's basically the description I gave a couple paragraphs ago, and that's because Colors doesn't really have that much story. Hell, when you press start, the game dumps you into the first level with no cutscene in sight until the 3rd stage. In these 3D Sonic videos, I've enjoyed jumping around between topics as the video goes on, but for Colors, I don't think it's super necessary because again, there really isn't much story in this game. What is there is so small that the order of stages doesn't even matter. A pretty cool detail is that after the first zone, you unlock Sweet Mountain and Starlight Carnival. The boss cutscenes are swapped between these two depending on which one you play first. Although not so cool is how the game drops that standard when you unlock the next 3 zones, and Sonic and Tails talk like the game is over after I beat Asteroid Coaster first, before Planet Wisp and Aquarium Park. As for the plot itself, one of the things that has become a heavily contested topic regarding Sonic Colors would be the way it goes about telling its story. In fact, a video about the changes brought to the Sonic series by the story of Colors was what kicked off this whole attitude I currently have about Sonic in the first place. In that video, my biggest gripes with Colors, as I didn't really spend much time talking about it there, were the following. The fact that the cutscenes see the characters just kind of standing around, something earlier games had suffered from, and something that, like I said in the Riders video, was getting more and more noticeable in the Sonic games as time went on compared to what other companies were pulling off. But in comparison to Sonic Unleashed, I just think these cutscenes are a big step down. I get it's the Wii game, but my point has less to do with graphics or whatever and more to do with presentation, as Unleashed had a lot of cutscenes that were focused on action set pieces, and those were the ones I really enjoyed. Contrary to what you may hear about me, or God forbid, what you might actually believe about me, I'm only really looking for an action-adventure themed story out of these games, when Colors' focus is more on the jokey side of things. Humor is a very difficult thing to criticize because of the fact that what is funny is very subjective, but believe me when I say this, I love to laugh. But the brand of humor in this game just doesn't do it for me.
And then nothing will stop me. I know I say that every time, but this time really, nothing will stop me. What? Sonic!
Who you calling nothing?
He means since the boss said nothing will stop me, and Sonic here is going to stop him, it's like the boss was calling Sonic nothing.
Great! I thought nobody would get that.
That scene is a perfect example where the setup wasn't bad, but they really ran it into the ground fast. Same goes for the translator jokes that get out of Tails trying to understand the Wisps, or most of the jokes with Tails like the sushi restaurant gag. It's just the characters standing around and talking about something, and it doesn't really do anything for me. Then there are the Eggman PAs that play throughout the stages. These could have been funny, and in fact, some of them are pretty good. My favorite being,
"The mighty ocean, cradle of life, trivialized for your amusement at Eggman's incredible interstellar amusement park."
but others suffered from that same problem where the joke just goes on way too long. It's just very self-indulgent.
"We know they look delicious, but please refrain from licking the ride. That would be disgusting. Do you know where those rides have been? People have been sitting on those rides with their butts. Okay, go ahead, lick them. Don't say we didn't warn you."
But Mike Pollock sounds like he's having a lot of fun with it, so that's good. But I'll tell you this though, in the pre-release, I saw they were bringing the Orbot character back from Sonic Unleashed, who wasn't named that in Unleashed, but, you know, that's the name he's got now. So I was pretty excited for that, because he was actually pretty funny in Unleashed, like I went into in that video. But now we've got Orbot doing basically nothing for the entire game besides just standing there. I don't know, it's not very funny now. And there's also Qbot, who I thought had an interesting design when I first saw him, but he's just nails on a chalkboard for the entire game, so that's something I really don't like about the story. Besides that, I just don't have that much to say on the story of Colors. At the end of the day, a lot of people really enjoy this. I personally don't, but I'm not trying to rain on anyone else's parade, especially when at this point I'm far more apathetic on the subject of this game's story than anything else. Which might come as a disappointment to fans expecting an epic teardown of this plot, but really it's just not to my taste. But it only lasts like 20 minutes worth of cutscenes in a game I otherwise enjoy playing, so yeah. When I was a kid, I was very upset that Chip's bracelet wasn't on Sonic. I missed Jason Griffith as Sonic, I missed the action cutscenes, all that stuff. But I was and still am willing to put that aside, because I just think this game is fun. Sonic Colors deserves a lot of credit for taking the gameplay of the HD version of Sonic Unleashed and bringing that to the Wii. If you played Sonic Unleashed on the Wii, you'd get the impression that the Wii was less capable or something. Not saying that was the reason Unleashed Wii played differently, but I'm saying that this is probably what most people who played both believed. But like I said, in Sonic Colors, all the major mechanics from Sonic Unleashed are here and accounted for, like the boost being back to how it was in that game, Sonic can stomp, wall jump, slide, drift, and quick step. However, there were some changes made to the formula between games. For example, in Unleashed, Sonic could do the light speed dash, something that got cut in Colors. Filling your boost gauge came at the cost of rings, which were plentiful throughout the levels. In Colors, the boost is now activated by white Wisp capsules, and these are more rare than rings, but I don't think you'll be left without the boost for long stretches of time in Colors, as the capsules are in decent supply when you need them, and sometimes enemies drop them, so this change doesn't make that much of a difference. Unleashed also had these often do-or-die quick-time events, as many 7th Gen games did, but Colors replaces that with these moments where you have to mash the A button as the announcer gets really excited. Not much challenge to that, but it works. The biggest change to Colors from Unleashed would be what I called speed control methods in the Unleashed review, the quick step and the drift. The quick step was done with the shoulder buttons, but now you can use it with the analog stick during predetermined set pieces like here in Aquarium Park, but not in areas where it looks handy like this part of Sweet Mountain. While the Colors quick step is more limited in use, I think it overall works better than Unleashed, as the 3 lanes, or however many there are, always work properly. In Unleashed, it would work fine in moments like this, but then you'd get parts of Skyscraper Scamper like this where you might undershoot the move. So Colors upping the consistency of the quick step is a great improvement. Then there's the drift. This was a part of Sonic Unleashed that I really thought needed improvement, as drifting at high speed was always really awkward as you'd overshoot or undershoot the turn. It was so unreliable that I'd often choose not to use it when the point was for it to flow seamlessly with your speed. The worst showing being again Skyscraper Scamper. In Colors, you get dedicated segments with it, and I'd actually say it's worse than Unleashed. You use the analog stick here like the quick step, but you need to use the boost button to do it, so you can't use the boost during drifting segments, so it's hard to gain speed here and even more difficult to maintain it. The reason for these changes to the quick step and the drift is a result of the game being on the Wii and supporting a wide variety of control options. If you play Colors on the Wii, you can play with the Wii Remote and the Nunchuck, the Wii Remote on its side, the classic controller, and the GameCube controller. I've never actually played this game with anything other than the GameCube controller. I just feel like it's more natural to hold a controller while playing a game like Colors than the Wii Remote. I'd imagine it was just the Wii Remote on its side that required the controls to be compromised, since you only had 4 buttons to work with in that case, but that's of no concern to me because for this video I played Colors the best way you can, which is on Dolphin with my Xbox One PC controller. You might have noticed that the videos I did on Secret Rings and Black Knight primarily focused on the Wii versions played off of original hardware, and that was just because I thought the Wii-centric gimmicks were so central to the games that I wanted to do reviews that were as accurate as I could get them. For Colors, since you can just play with the GameCube controller, I'm just going to do that on Dolphin with a 60 FPS hack and texture pack. Speaking of Dolphin, I'd like to interrupt this regularly scheduled review and bring you a formal apology. I did use Dolphin footage during my videos on Secret Rings and Black Knight, as you can no doubt tell with the 60 FPS clips, but for Secret Rings, it came to my attention that there was a critical error in my Dolphin footage. The Wii is natively a 16:9 console, but it's compatible with 4:3 if that's the setup you have. Sonic and the Black Knight and Sonic Colors are set to 16:9 by default. Secret Rings is not. This is Secret Rings in 4:3, and this is it in 16:9. And this is it stretched 4:3. You need to go into the game's options and change the aspect ratio, something I did not know before this comment pointed out my footage being stretched 4:3. How totally embarrassing! While on the subject of non-gameplay stuff, Sonic Colors uses the amusement park setting to deliver locations that are very fresh. Tropical Resort is the entrance, Sweet Mountain is a level built out of fake sweets and other treats like hamburgers and stuff. Starlight Carnival being the best visuals in the game as you ride on these light roads while you take in the space vista. Planet Wisp shows the Wisp homeworld under construction by Eggman to make a theme park. Aquarium Park having a feudal influence while being set underwater. And Asteroid Coaster seeing you ride roller coasters throughout an asteroid field. A bit simple, but I'm trying to show that I think the level aesthetics are very interesting and unique. While one might think this is all held back by the game being released for the Nintendo Wii, a console that's output is limited to 480p via component, I still think this game shines when played on a Wii. It's very pleasing on the eyes and cleans up really well on Dolphin. When playing it on Dolphin with 60 FPS, there are some issues like this opening part of Aquarium Park Act 1 where if you move the stick or press any buttons, you will die immediately in the opening loop. But besides that, it looks and plays great. Taking a game I thought looked great in 480p and making it even better. Sonic's exact character model carried over from Sonic Unleashed and downgraded just enough to work on the Wii, and I think it also looks great and natural as he now starts stages by doing these stretches. A nice bit of character. Then there's the music. I've slept on the soundtrack of Colors before, but these days I think it's not my favorite in the series, but it's an absolute win nonetheless, as each zone gets 3 unique tracks, and each zone is a different mood than the previous one, like the festive vibe of Sweet Mountain, the relaxing mood of Planet Wisp, and the real bangers coming out of Asteroid Coaster. The game also carries over the trend from Sonic Unleashed where you have 2 new vocal themes, one for the intro and credits, Reach for the Stars and Speak with Your Heart, as well as an orchestrated theme that sounds fantastic. I think Endless Possibility is better than Reach for the Stars, but ever since day one I always thought this song was super catchy. Although I will say this game marked the debut of the band Cash Cash into the series and their very synthy, digitized kind of music. It's not really for everyone, but like I said, I've always enjoyed this song at least.
I'm gonna reach for the stars.
So anyway, the main gimmick of Sonic Colors is the newly introduced Wisp aliens. These are gradually unlocked as you play the game and serve more as active power-ups than Sonic games are used to. I already mentioned that the white Wisp fills your boost gauge, but then getting into the other ones, first you have the cyan laser where Sonic fires forward like a laser beam. At first, you'll pause for a brief moment and have to aim where the laser is going to go, aiming off of walls to land targets, or gems to prolong the laser period. Then there's the yellow drill wisp, which allows you to burrow underground and discover secrets. The orange rocket wisp will send Sonic flying into the air as he'll free fall after the period is up. The blue cube wisp turns these blue cubes into blue rings and vice versa, which you must time correctly for the platforming segments. The green hover wisp allows you to fly for a short period of time and do the light speed dash on ring trails. The pink spike wisp smashes through any obstacles while being able to ignore the laws of gravity and climb any surface, in addition to being able to spin dash. And lastly, there's the purple frenzy wisp, which will allow Sonic to consume all obstacles and become bigger, making the form's controls easier to deal with while prolonging your time in this state. When listed on paper like that, I feel as though the wisps seem pretty superfluous, however they do a pretty decent job adding to the variety of the stages in the moment, and adding some replay value as the wisps contribute to the level design in a really positive way. In general, I was very surprised by how good the level design in Sonic Colors has held up. These stages are just massive, and using the wisps is just the start of exploring them. Like using the drill wisp to find not only secrets but entirely different stage portions like Sweet Mountain Act 1, or using the rocket and finding a different route in Planet Wisp Act 4. Wisps contribute a lot to this, but like I said, the levels just feel very big in general, like taking a different roller coaster ride in Asteroid Coaster and getting access to a quicker, higher path than on the ground. In Planet Wisp Act 6, you'll see this homing attack trail leading to a grind rail, but if you descend from here, you'll find an entire freefall section hiding one of the game's main collectibles. Or getting on the grind rail at the top of Aquarium Park Act 1, or in Act 6 where you reach this ring trail meant for the hover wisp. Maybe you'll get a bit curious as to what's on that platform in the distance. That is satisfying exploration. Sonic Colors is full of that kind of stuff in all 6 of the main zones. The biggest complaint thrown at Colors would be the ratio of 2D gameplay versus 3D gameplay. In Sonic Unleashed, the camera would occasionally shift to the side and you'd be playing Sonic from a 2D angle. To be honest, I didn't bring this up in that video because of the fact that these segments are very insignificant from a content point of view. Many of Unleashed 2D sections are short-lived and easy, besides the optional stages that is. Here in Colors, 2D segments seem a lot more entwined with the boost formula. To be honest, I can't really say much here because I don't think 2D is the biggest problem with the stages in Colors. When the stages go 2D, there's still a lot to explore with the Drill Wisp and Sweet Mountain, or platforming to do an Asteroid Coaster, so therefore I don't see a problem because that's all content I enjoy doing. The problem with stages in Colors come from levels like these where it's an auto-scroller and you just have to wait for the game to catch up to your pace and it's incredibly boring. Or these terrible segments where you have to wait on elevators moving at the speed of molasses, thus making any obstacles completely moot. But segments I think are boring aren't limited to 2D. Like, remember this entire stage from Asteroid Coaster where you have to just quick step spam and you win after like 45 seconds? This can be explained by looking into the structure of this game, as it's very unusual by typical Sonic standards. Sonic 1 had 3 acts per zone, but then games like Sonic 2, 3, or Heroes would have 2. But Sonic Colors is the lone exception where each zone has 6 acts each. You can clearly see when playing the main stages that there weren't meant to be this many acts. Just look at Sweet Mountain Act 1. There is clearly more level right behind the goal, and Act 2 just starts there. Dividing a big stage into smaller chunks isn't bad, but then Colors has a problem with filler stages. Take Tropical Resort Act 4 for example. Here you play a near unaltered segment of Act 1 again. It's a bit strange. I can only call these stages filler levels because the purpose they serve is making the game longer, when the final game isn't even that long to begin with. Like I said in the Black Knight video, there's a pretty direct connection between the amount of stuff in a 3D Sonic game and how long that game is. Sonic Colors, as far as the main 3D games are concerned, has no time-consuming gimmick like the Werehog or multiple campaigns, and the game can be beaten in about 2 hours, probably less than that honestly. It's not a large issue for me since I enjoy coming back to games that I think are fun, it's just that I notice it when the game is supplemented by non-stages like Aquarium Park Act 5. But honestly, filler levels are made a lot better through the act of fully completing the game. That's kind of weird to say, but to explain it in more detail, Sonic Unleashed had day and night medals to collect in every stage, but I only talked about them as the barrier to entry of stages, which is all that really mattered anyway. Sonic Colors introduces the series staple red rings, of which 5 are hidden in every stage. Here is where I'd say you'd get the most out of the stages in this game, filler or otherwise, as replaying the stages to fully complete them allows you to see all the little nooks and crannies you might have missed in a Tropical Resort Act 4, and it will allow you to use the Wisps to their full potential, reaching new areas of stages to fully complete them. For a couple of reasons that will be explained, if made a year ago, this Sonic Colors review would have been completely different from how it is today, but one of the main reasons it's as positive as it is would be because I decided to 100% the game, and this allowed me to see its gameplay in a much different light than I did before, thinking the stages have a lot of replay value. Once you collect all 5 red rings in a stage, there's also the ranking system to invest your time into. I could never get S ranks in most color stages because I've always heard it said that you needed to just spam Wisp powers to get the color bonus seen on the screen right now. This isn't untrue, but I actually think the secret of the S rank is a little more interesting. Collecting a red ring gives you 30,000 points. Times that by 5 and you have 150,000 points. When you get a red ring, it leaves behind a ghost version of said ring. When you play the stage again, you can grab that ghost ring and still get the 30k points. The true way to get an S rank in Sonic Colors is by getting the red rings, and to do that requires you making a use out of the Wisps to explore, netting you that color bonus. Doing this for each zone allowed me to appreciate colors in a way that I never did before. You even get some nifty unlockables for doing all that work. Collecting all the red rings unlocks more stages in a hidden world called Game Land, which might seem like multiplayer stages on first glance. When you unlock and play them all, some contain throwback layouts to classic Sonic games, a very cool Easter egg. But more importantly, you'll gain access to one of the 7 Chaos Emeralds. Grabbing them all unlocks Super Sonic as a playable transformation for the first time in a game that houses 3D sections. Heh, you thought I was about to say this was a 3D game, lol. This was a really good unlockable and showed that Sonic Team was finally listening to what people were saying after over 10 years of Super Sonic being a final boss event exclusively in the 3D series. Although, if I'm honest, he's not very fun to play as, because he can't use Wisps for some reason, which means exploring in Supersonic mode is a no-go, which also means that S ranks are out of the question. But if you want to blast through the stages as Supersonic, go nuts. You deserve it if you put in all the work to get there. Once all 6 zones are completed, you can move towards the climax of the game, the last level, Terminal Velocity. Now this isn't a full zone, but let's just get through it. You start with Eggman's alien energy machine going haywire due to a setup from earlier in the story, and now everybody needs to get out of the park before it's consumed by a black hole. Terminal Velocity Act 1 is nothing like Eggman Land, a giant gauntlet that tested all of your skills. For this stage, you're on autopilot and need to quick step out of the way of obstacles. It's simple and honestly gets pretty boring by the end of it. If you save your boost energy, you can just outrun the final enemy's projectiles without even dodging it, which is what I do when I play this stage. From those lofty heights, you get a final boss that is absolutely fantastic. No memes, I'm being serious. And this is Colors, a game where the bosses aren't really worth writing home about. Even if you got the Chaos Emeralds, there is no Supersonic final boss fight. In an actually pretty subversive move, you just get Eggman as the final boss of the game as Sonic pushes Tails into the escape pod and fights alone. Cool moment. When you start the fight, you're still on autopilot, needing to quick step and jump out of the way of the attacks. But I really like the moment because Eggman and his Wisp power harnessing machine uses the very Wisp powers that you have been using for the whole game against you, as you start with this climactic music for the first phase like Sonic 06 and Sonic Unleashed. When you get some hits in, you start to rescue your Wisp friends and they form a line behind you as the Phase 2 music kicks in. The instrumental, orchestral main theme trope the last 2 games also had. This one gets a criminally short amount of airtime in the game because when you listen to it, I'd say it's one of the best tracks in the whole series. Ending the boss fight with you using all the Wisp powers combined for one final attack.
Unlimited colors. Laser, drill, spikes, rocket, you, hammer, frenzy.
Final color blaster.
Great way to go out. Then you get Terminal Velocity Act 2 as the black hole gets bigger and Sonic tries to outrun it to get back to the surface. Gotta say, if you needed any more proof that Sonic's basically a demigod, this dude can outrun a black hole for 37 straight seconds. But the level inevitably ends with you getting sucked in. But in the end, the freed Wisps rescue Sonic and bring him back to Earth before they can finally go home and never return. Ending Sonic Colors.
Right on.
Thinking back on this game, I just think that the climax and ending is pretty cool. The kind of stuff I've been talking about since I did the Sonic 1 segment in 2020. In many ways, Sonic Colors is the beginning of a lot of things. The game's humor being positively received led to that being a staple of the series in the years to come. The meta era, if you will. But it also feels like an end, as it's a game with original and inspired level locations and a finale I'm going to remember. In fact, it is an ending I still remember. 11 years ago, I first heard that final boss theme before the game came out and thought it was amazing. Couldn't wait to hear it in the game, which I finally got to do a couple weeks later after launch when I finally beat the game. I have a lot of fondness in my mind for Sonic Colors because of the nostalgia. I mean, think about it. You grow up with the Dark Age games, and then you go online and find all these internet personalities saying your favorite games suck. I guess they're right, but I'm still looking forward to Colors. Colors came out, and everyone loves it. It felt really vindicating to love the new Sonic game for everyone online to seemingly feel the same way about it. Sonic doesn't suck, it's just those 2000s games like 06 that do. With Colors, they stuck to their guns on a gameplay style that worked and took off with flying colors. Pun aside, that's the memory I have of Sonic Colors and its impact. Later on, Sonic Colors would receive more criticism for the direction it took the Sonic franchise in from people who preferred the stuff that came before. I guess you could say I also played a big part in that. If you don't like Colors, that's fine, everyone can have their own opinion. But to explain why things have changed for me, it's just that 1, I find new joy in the levels, this video has made that clear. But also, looking back on the game's release and playing it then, I can only smile. It's a game I spent a whole year looking forward to and I really enjoyed it and the response that it got. Earlier this year, I was listening to the final boss music again, which is when that memory of hearing it for the first time came back to me and I just smiled at the thought. It was also earlier this year that it was announced that Roger Craig Smith would no longer be voicing Sonic. It has since been revealed that he will be resuming the role, however that period where he seemed to have been done gave me pause for thought about the whole thing. I always say, I don't feel like giving 06 a lot of shit because 15 years later its flaws can be acknowledged in my review of the game, but it doesn't really bear much significance on the Sonic series because the games are no longer anything like that. I don't know if the meta era will truly end with the next game, but I feel like it's possible. So going into this video, I didn't feel like bashing Colors was needed, nor would that be an accurate reflection of how I truly feel about the game, because it has been 11 years. As a package, I have very few negative things to say about Sonic Colors, and that's just how I feel about it. It wasn't always that way, and it wasn't even that way a year and a half ago. But like I said, it's where I'm at now. The positivity for 2010 Sonic games isn't going anywhere though, because the next big video will be focused on 2011's Sonic Generations, a game that's already 10 years old somehow. We can save it for then. In the meantime, I'll thank everyone for watching, and I will see you next time.